And welcome to another Joseph Morris live stream. If you're new here, hello, how are you? I am Joseph Morris. I am joined here by my beautiful co-host, Miss Gabby. She is sleeping right now, so your chats are on the screen, and you can sound off with all your speculation, your comments, your opinions, and I will be reading them throughout the live stream. Or if you're watching this at a later date, please make sure you leave a comment down below. Do not forget to press like on my video, helps out my channel, and if you want to hang out some more, discuss this crazy case that is iconic and brave and going to be talked about for the next year, please make sure you hit the subscribe button, ring the bell so you never miss a live, because I love hanging out with you guys. So new video has emerged of Will and Jada's True entitled Colors that were on full display that night, and it was sickening. So this new video has emerged of the moments following Will Smith's slap of Chris Rock at the Oscars, showing Jada Pinkett Smith's reaction as she looked on from a table near the stage. So let's watch the video together. Thank you so much for being here.
Wow, dude. Yeah. It was a G.I. Jane. Keep my wife's name out your mouth. I'm going to, okay? That was the greatest night in the history of television. Okay. So we are here.
Yeah, so you can't really see her face, but she actually finds it funny. The video posted to TikTok was shot from the floor of the Dolby Theater in Hollywood on Sunday, from a vantage point directly behind the table where Smith and Pinkett Smith were seated. Though her face cannot be seen clearly, Pinkett Smith appears to chuckle and laugh and find it funny that her husband just assaulted somebody in the immediate aftermath of the slap. As Rock reacts by saying, quote, "Wow, Will Smith just smacked the S word out of me." She finds that funny. I don't know. I saw Mobius in the chat saying she's a succubus, and that's really funny. But anyway, the actress 50 glances briefly at her husband as he shouts for the first time, "Keep my wife's name out your effing mouth." However, she keeps her eyes fixed on Chris Rock as Smith repeats his demand at a louder volume. Pinkett Smith then appears to chuckle again as Rock states, "The greatest night in the history of television." So let's just watch it again. So I think she laughs kind of twice.
Okay. That was the greatest night in the history of television. Okay. So we are here to give a documentary.
Yeah, so she laughs actually right after the smack. Again, laughing. This is crazy.
Wow, dude. Yeah. It was a G.I. Jane. Keep my wife's name out your mouth. I'm going to, okay?
Wow.
Greatest night in the history of television.
That's disturbing. So the new video comes as Rock speaks out for the first time since the infamous incident, briefly addressing the matter in his first stand-up act since the Oscars. Rock on Wednesday night told an audience at his sold-out comedy show in Boston that he was still processing being slapped on stage by Smith at the Oscars in his first public response to Sunday's shocking incident. So let's watch his official response. You can tell he's really shaken up by it.
How was your weekend? I don't have like a bunch of about what happened. So if you came to hear that, I had like a whole show I wrote before this weekend. And I'm still kind of processing what happened. Like so at be serious. It'll be funny.
Zoom, Chris, zoom!
So yeah, that's the official response that he had, even though it's not really much of a response, but you know, you can tell he's really shaken up by it. And I think everybody was kind of shaken up by it. So with the crowd all handing over their cell phones at his stand-up show before the show began, the former Saturday Night Live star Chris Rock was greeted with a long-standing ovation at the first of 2 sets he performed Wednesday as part of his Ego Death Tour. So he's touring right now, but he is not addressing the situation. I still think he's still in shock because judging by this video, in some ways, he was badly humiliated. I think this is very humiliating for him to have an entire audience laugh at him immediately after he was assaulted. Not only was the Academy Awards not doing anything to protect him on his roast. I mean, you look at Ricky Gervais, his roast of the audience was 100 times worse. He was calling everybody pretos and all that stuff, and he didn't get a slap. So it's just so frustrating for me as a fan of both Chris Rock and Will Smith, but to see this happen, it's just, I feel really bad for Chris Rock when I see this angle, especially because you realize people were just laughing at him, and you can tell in his response that he's still shaken up. There's actually an article about this where he says that he was bullied in his youth, and he shows up to his bully with a sack and a brick in the sack, and then takes that sack and whacks his bully and badly injured him. So he felt really bad about that scenario that now he's afraid to react whatsoever to any sort of act of violence. And you can see that in this scenario, he's just in shock, and he's still in shock. And I just feel really bad for him. So the usually uninhibited funny man quickly shut down any hopes he would crack jokes about the slap heard around the world to the 3,000 fans in the audience at his comedy show, but some of whom reportedly were paid nearly $1,000 for a ticket to this show. 3,000 people times 1,000. This guy's making bank. And there's conspiracies that maybe this was fake, even though I don't really believe it was. And, you know, there's this background of Lupita, and she's laughing too. And, you know, a lot of comedians actually called out how spineless people were, because not only were they laughing, but they were also giving him a standing ovation. And I understand at this point, myself included, I thought this was a part of his act. I thought for sure that he was actually going up to the stage as a part of the stand-up roast. And I can understand why some people were laughing, but Jada especially would know that this was not a joke, that this was not funny. And her reaction is, I'm going to use a 3-syllable word, disgusting. It's disgusting. They're like bullies. So twice during the stand-up show, a couple of members of the audience shouted, "Will Smith." And that was during his stand-up show. Chris Rock is getting heckled in his show last night after the incident. And there's no cell phones allowed, so I only have a review of it. But it drew a far louder chorus of boos. So if you're in the Chris Rock audience during a stand-up and you start yelling about Will Smith, you'll get booed. Police confirmed that the man who was yelling and heckling Chris Rock was maced and kicked out of the theater by multiple security guards. So Chris Rock is not having any of this sort of scenario where he's being heckled with Will Smith, and rightfully so. I mean, it's pretty traumatizing. The kerfuffle disrupted Rock, who responded the second time by saying, quote, "Is this how this tour is going to go?" Because he's trying to tell jokes, and the moment he starts telling jokes, people start yelling Will Smith, and they get kicked out. Later, Rock commented on his life in general, saying that except for some weird things, life is pretty good right now. The crowd laughed, knowing exactly what the weird things he was referring to in his stand-up. Rock seemed unfazed as he delivered his typically high-energy routine, keeping the crowd roaring and gasping as he joked about everything from overweight people at Disney parks to his decision to get a vasectomy after seeing a 78-year-old Robert De Niro walking around with a child. He joked about how he spends all his money on women, and Riley recommended his ex-wife's divorce lawyer to the audience for winning her half of his fortune without her ever telling a joke. This guy just has such a good sense of humor. He's very professional, and you got a super fan now, Chris Rock. The Academy said on Wednesday, he ignored. So the Academy, got a huge amount of backlash from different people, YouTubers included. But the fact that Will Smith got a standing ovation after this, after he won Best Actor award, and the fact that Chris Rock wasn't protected from this, got a huge lot of backlash. And the Academy actually responded and said on Wednesday that Will Smith ignored the request from the president, David Rubin, and CEO Don Hudson to leave, and that he had violated their code of conduct. Shortly after, Smith was announced as the winner of the Best Actor award and went up to collect his statuette to a standing ovation from many of his peers, who Jim Carrey called spineless. But on Wednesday, the Academy said it had launched disciplinary procedures against Smith and confirmed that he ignored their request for him to leave his seat. I mean, too little, too late. There should have been security right there. And this is the thing that really bothers me about roast is if you're sitting front row, chances are you're going to get roasted, right? So the fact that they were not prepared for this and is pretty crazy. So they also apologized to Rock, the Academy did. Two sources told TMZ, actually, Rubin and Hudson were furious at Smith, and there was plenty of yelling and heated conversations backstage with his representatives after the incident. So the big question is, how did they tell Will Smith to leave? Will Smith clearly isn't being approached by security, but apparently they were contacting his reps backstage. I don't know how being famous works, but anyway, the statement said from the Academy, quote, "The Board of Governors today initiated disciplinary proceedings against Mr. Smith for violations of the Academy's standards of conduct, including inappropriate physical contact, abusive or threatening behavior, and compromising the integrity of the Academy. Mr. Smith was asked to leave the ceremony and refused, but we also recognize we could have handled the situation differently," end quote. So yeah, handling the situation differently by getting the security there. I don't know. I think the Academy in some ways is actually kind of lying to protect their own butts because of the backlash, because they basically let someone get assaulted on stage and now they're trying to cover their own behinds by not getting sued. And so I don't know if I really believe the Academy statement. Smith will receive 15 days notice of a vote, as well as an opportunity to be heard by written response at the next board meeting scheduled for April 18th. So I'm going to be talking about this board meeting, so make sure you subscribe. The Academy may take action that could include suspension, expulsion, or other sanctions permitted by the bylaws and standards of conduct. So in his acceptance speech, Smith apologized to the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, whose members vote for the awards and who stages the ceremony, but stopped short of apologizing to Rock. Smith initially laughed off the attack, writing on Instagram on Sunday evening, quote, "You can't invite people from Philly or Baltimore nowhere." That's what he wrote on his Instagram after this incident. He was just making it a huge joke. And that's the reason why I thought this could have been faked, is because of the fact that everybody was laughing about it. I was like, oh, this is a part of the skit, right? But it's not. And Jada knew that, and she's laughing. So Jada, there's something going on there, you know? Yet, as the gravity of the situation became clear, Smith then posted a public apology to Instagram 24 hours after the ceremony, saying he wanted to say sorry formally to Rock. He said his behavior was unacceptable and inexcusable and left him embarrassed. So more and more people are speaking out, but Daniel Radcliffe this morning said he was bored of hearing everyone's opinions. So I know a lot of people in my chat are probably from the UK right now just because of the time difference. So that was Daniel Radcliffe. He said he was just bored of everybody's jokes, which is kind of funny. So your chats are online, and I'm going to read your chats. Thank you so much for being here. Please make sure you subscribe, ring the bell so you never miss a live stream. And I'm going to give Gabby a treat because she's been so good. Look at her. You're not Jada Pinkett Smith. You don't laugh when other people get hurt, right? Okay, so let me just get right into the chats. Thank you so much. There's 866 people here. If I get 866 likes on my video, I'll be over the moon. So please make sure you like my video. I see some people talking about Rashid Jurgens, Holly Weird. And the moment someone says Holly Weird, I agree with you. Taylor Hawkins drying after that whole Studio 66 ritual sacrifice video. This looking like a whole humiliation ritual for Will Smith. Holy freaking weird, man. Yeah, so Rashid, I was going to do a huge video on Taylor Hawkins and how this one person in the band named Dave Grohl, who's the lead singer, actually was in the Nirvana band. And, you know, the guy from Nirvana, was also passed away under mysterious circumstances as well. So is there some sort of connection there? And especially in Studio 66, where, you know, you see Grohl murdering his bandmates. It's kind of weird that like immediately after Hawkins died and he has a history with Nirvana, Kurt Cobain. So very interesting. Thank you for that, chat. Holly Weird. Magazine, my God, this may be real, but if not, this is just more dog whistling. The real big story is Hunter Biden, Prince Andrew, the Ukraine-Russia shady war we just gave $500 million to. And that's the thing, guys. You know, there's a lot of conspiracies out there that this is just trying to hide the public from what is actually going on, including Hunter Biden's laptop. We also have the conspiracy that this Oscars was funded by Pfizer, who is the vaccine. And then all of a sudden, Pfizer, after this Oscars, is releasing a drug to treat alopecia. So it is kind of weird that this is all kind of happening. And, you know, Russia just pulled out of Ukraine the other day, and Putin is in nuclear bunkers. So there's people that are like, are they trying to hide something? And then we also have Hunter Biden's laptop proving that he was funding biological research in Ukraine, despite the American media saying that those weren't ever existing. So thank you for that. You know, maybe they are trying to gaslight the public. Laughing as she watches her husband make the worst move of his career in her behalf. She didn't even try to stop him. She could have yelled out, "Will, stop," but nope. That's how we do it instead, Tone G writes. And that's a very good point, because a lot of people are pointing out to the fact that there's frustrations in their marriage. So as you know, Will and Jada Pinkett Smith have a open relationship. Jada at one point was dating her son's best friend, August, and admitted to it on live television during Red Table Talks in front of Will Smith. So she also said on this show, Red Table Talks, that her husband, Will, can't please her. So she has to go see other people to get pleased. So it's humiliating for Will. Will has been dragged through the mud repeatedly. So there's not just about her alopecia. It was a joke. There's clearly a lot going on in their relationship, and it's very obvious that that's the case. And, you know, her official response was, "Let the healing begin." However, the thing about that is the healing, right? What are they referring to? Are they referring to their marriage? Are they referring to his trauma? Because Will Smith also has a traumatic background where his father was an alcoholic and abusive to his mother. And in his memoir, Will, he talks about how he wishes in those moments that he could stop his father from abusing his mother. And so maybe this was his way of stopping his not being a coward anymore. And that's his complex. So I don't know what the healing meant, but I do think that there is something else going on with Will Smith. And so thank you so much for that comment. I really, really appreciate that. And I love all you guys being here. Let me just keep reading your comments. Will brought his problems to the Oscar that night, and Jada was the cause of it. He is the puppet, and Jada is the puppet master. I love that. So if you're new here, hello. I see there's a ton of people joining. I just want to say thank you to everybody joining. And new video has emerged of Jada actually laughing at Chris Rock after he was slapped. So with the crowd all So this is actually new footage I got from TikTok, and it shows Jada laughing. So let's get into it. To all the new people here, thank you so much for joining me.
Please don't tell me you didn't see, like, because whenever we ask an
Wow, dude. Yeah. It was a G.I. Janger.
Keep my wife's name out your mouth.
I'm going to, okay? So I can go. That was the greatest night in the history of television. Okay. So we are here to give a documentary.
Yeah, so if you look at this video, it's a new angle, never been seen before. It's Jada actually laughing immediately after he was slapped. So she finds that funny. And then we also have another moment where after he's in his seat, she's laughing again at Will Smith being very, very angry. Let's watch it. This is her being, after Chris Rock was slapped, her laughing. And the thing about this is she knew this wasn't a joke. She knew this was real. And she finds this funny.
Wow, dude. Yeah. It was a G.I. Janger.
Keep my wife's name out your mouth.
I'm going to, okay? So I can go. That was the greatest night in the history of television. Okay. So we are here to give a documentary.
Thank you so much for that super chat. Heaven Reigns writes, did you know Jada was a heroin dealer in Baltimore, Maryland before she became famous, according to Wikipedia?
Wow, dude.
Wow.
It was a G.I.
Thank you for that.
Keep my wife's name out your
So yeah, you can see Jada laughing twice in this, and I can understand someone like Lupita laughing because even I thought this was a staged bit. I thought, you know, this was all a part of the stand-up comedy routine, but Jada would know that it wasn't, and Jada is laughing. So Will and Jada's true entitled colors were on full display that night, and it was sickening. So this is new video that emerged of the moments following Will Smith's slap of Chris Rock at the Oscars, showing Jada Pinkett Smith's reaction as she looked on from a table near the stage. The video posted to TikTok was shot from the floor of the Dolby Theater in Hollywood on Sunday from a vantage point directly behind the table where Smith and Pinkett Smith were seated. Though her face cannot be seen clearly, Pinkett Smith appears to laugh in the immediate aftermath of the slap. And she knew it wasn't fake. So yeah, the heroin dealer information is also really interesting. So there she is laughing. She finds it funny. And then she laughs again. She's smiling.
It was a G.I. Janger.
Unbelievable.
I'm going to, okay?
Wow.
That was the greatest night in the history of television.
Awkward.
So we are here.
So yeah, she laughs. She's laughing throughout. Jada Pinkett Smith glances briefly at her husband as he shouts for the first time, "Keep my wife's name out your effing mouth." She finds that funny, and she keeps her eyes fixed on Rock as Smith repeats his demand at a louder volume. Pinkett Smith then appears to chuckle again as Rock states, "The greatest night in history of television."
I'm going to, okay? So I can go. That was the greatest night in the history.
Pretty sickening. It's bullying. It's straight up bullying.
So we are here.
What a bunch of bullies.
Give a documentary.
And Chris Rock actually said on previously that he doesn't want to deal with bullies by reacting violently because he was bullied as a child. And then he took a pillow, put a brick inside of it, went up to his bully and whacked his bully over the head. And his bully was badly injured to the point where he felt really bad about it and now never reacts with violence to these things. And you can see that he just kind of freezes and goes, what just happened? But he keeps his composure and he keeps going. So if there's one good role model in all of this, it's Chris Rock. Chris Rock is clearly still shaken up by this. So the new video comes as Rock speaks out for the first time since the infamous incident, briefly addressing the matter in his first stand-up act since the Oscars. Rock on Wednesday told an audience at his sold-out comedy show in Boston that he was, quote, still processing being slapped on stage by Smith at the Oscars in his first public response to Sunday's shocking incidents. So let's look at his response, because this is why I actually, there's a different layer. Once I got over my shock for Will Smith, I really started realizing like Chris Rock is probably experienced something very traumatic. So let's look at his response, and you can see that he's still very much shaken up by it.
How was your weekend? I don't have like a bunch of about what happened. So if you came to hear that, I had like a whole show I wrote before this weekend. And I'm still kind of processing what happened, so at some point I'll talk about that. And, it'll be serious, it'll be funny.
Sue him, Chris, sue him!
Yeah, so someone in the audience quipped, sue him, Chris, sue him, because honestly, if Chris Rock decides to sue Will Smith, he will make a ton of money. I mean, we all saw in real time him being assaulted, and it's pretty much clear cut. And this is the problem with celebrities. We talk about Alec Baldwin on my channel. Thank goodness Alec Baldwin wasn't Jada Pinkett Smith's wife, or Chris Rock wasn't making fun of Hilaria Baldwin, because Chris Rock probably wouldn't be alive right now. But no, in reality, it's the thing about this is no one is above the law. And you see these Hollywood elite basically being above the law in a lot of scenarios, including this one. And I think there needs to be more action in that regard to show some sort of punishment, because this is unreal. So during his stand-up comedy show, Chris Rock made all of the audience hand over their cell phones before the show began. And he's a former Saturday Night Live star, and he was greeted with a long-standing ovation in the first two sets he performed Wednesday as part of his Ego Death Tour. So his Ego Death Tour that he's now on after this incident is doing extremely well, which is great news for him. Although there's a conspiracy that maybe this was used to promote his new show. Either way, it's working out. But the usually uninhibited funny man quickly shut down any hopes he would crack jokes about the slap heard around the world to the 3,000 fans in the audience, some of whom reportedly paid nearly $1,000 for a ticket. So his tickets are being scalped for huge amounts right now because everybody wants to see his reaction. And he's not reacting. He's not really saying anything. He planned his set, he planned all his jokes, and he's going to stick to those jokes. So very interesting. Twice during the show, a couple members of the audience during his live stand-up performance yesterday in Boston yelled, quote, Will Smith. And when people in the audience are yelling Will Smith at his stand-up comedy show, people are actually booing them. And I don't have the footage because, again, you weren't allowed cell phones, but people in the audience were heckling Chris Rock, yelling, Will Smith, Will Smith. And it draws a lot of boos, and these people were very rowdy about it. And police confirmed that the man who was yelling that and heckling was maced and kicked out by the theater by multiple security guards. So this is a huge riot happening at his stand-up shows. You also have protesters outside of his stand-up shows. They're religious people standing outside shows talking about how violence isn't the answer, and it's a huge scene outside of his ego death Boston stand-up routine. The kerfuffles that is happening disrupted Rock, who responded the second time by saying, quote, "Is this how this tour is going to go?" So he's making fun of it. And then later, Rock commented on his life in general at a stand-up, saying that except for some weird things, life is pretty good right now. And of course, that made everybody laugh. He's actually kind of joking about it because he's referring to the weird things of being slapped and assaulted by Will Smith in front of an audience that humiliated him in front of millions of people. So if he sues for like assault and emotional distress, like he would never have to tour again, in my opinion. So it's pretty crazy that he's not doing anything, because I know I would. Jim Carrey said the same thing. He would sue him for $200 million. I would go for $300 million. You know, I think they would end up settling for that. The crowd laughed at the stand-up show, knowing exactly what the weird things refer to, and Rock seemed unfazed as he delivered his typically high-energy routine, keeping the crowd roaring and gasping as he joked about everything from overweight people at Disney parks to his decision to get a vasectomy after seeing a 78-year-old Robert De Niro walking around with a child. He joked about how he spends all his money on women, and Riley recommended his ex-wife's divorce lawyer to the audience for winning her half his fortune without ever telling a joke. So Chris Rock is laughing about his divorce and saying, hey, my wife is now a millionaire despite never doing a stand-up routine in her life, which is pretty funny. This guy is such an icon. The Academy said on Wednesday he ignored the request from the president. So the Academy is covering their butts because, as you can see, there's no security, and they let a guy get assaulted on stage. And for an Academy to be huge virtue signalers, you know, you can't turn it into an award show without somebody virtue signaling about, hey, the Ukraine war, we stand with Ukraine, or we stand with the don't say gay bill, LGBT. You know, they're always virtue signaling on these award shows. So it is kind of ironic and hypocritical for them to have a guy get assaulted on stage, and then immediately after, people are laughing, funny, he's not being taken out of the seat. And then icing on the cake, 40 minutes later, Will Smith wins the Best Actor award, and he gets a standing ovation after he just committed a crime and humiliated a huge celebrity on his biggest night. Like, empathize with Chris Rock here. He's performing stand-up at an Oscars, which is a huge milestone for him, and it was ruined by this outburst. And I just want to point out the difference between how Kanye West is treated when he did this to Taylor Swift. Even though it was an assault by Taylor Swift, Kanye West was immediately ridiculed as crazy and awful and was canceled. Meanwhile, there's a lot of Will Smith supporters out there, and I just find the difference very startling between that. And it just kind of speaks towards how we just, in the public opinion, just forgive certain people. And David Rubin, the CEO, Don Hudson, asked Will Smith to leave. So the Academy is covering their butts. And they said on yesterday, that Will Smith ignored the request from the president, David Rubin, and CEO, Don Hudson, to leave. And I don't know if I believe that. But they said that he had violated the code of conduct. So I don't know if the Academy is just trying to cover their own butts by saying that this is the case, that this is the reason why they are actually, they asked him to leave, because they could actually get themselves canceled. I'm sure there has to be a lot of people complaining about this, because we see, two huge icons that kids look up to getting in physical on television. So that probably sends the wrong message to a lot of people out there. And I'm sure a lot of people are actually very angry that now these people are teaching their children to react with violence. And, there's this video clip of Will Smith in November practicing a fake slap on a young child. So it is kind of troubling to think about how children are being seen right now. Thank you so much for that super chat. Pam Blankenship, they both made a mockery of their marriage, and he's cheated on her for years, making a joke with those acts. She's done the same. Why the fuss? They both made a mockery of their marriage, and he cheated on her for years, making a joke with those acts. She's done the same. Why the fuss? Exactly. This is to teach U.S. how First Amendment is dying. Exactly. So this is kind of like a psychological operation in a way to teach people that. Thank you for that super chat. I do want to read your names out. Dieter Andrew, thank you. And then I want to say thank you to Pam Blankenship. So I think it is interesting, the conspiracy that it's teaching people to no longer take a joke. And if you want to get into a psychological operation, you know, people are saying that maybe Will Smith is MK Ultra and had a glitch, but this is actually creating chaos because we're in the middle of a war. So there's actually a conspiracy saying that the rap music is an invention by the CIA to create chaos so that America can go to war. So it is kind of like this weird speculation right now that there is some sort of deeper meaning to this in teaching people different values. So let me just put your chats up on screen because I am live right now. Thank you for that. Shortly after, Smith was announced as the winner of the Best Actor award and went up to collect his statuette to a standing ovation from many of his peers. On Wednesday, the Academy said it had launched disciplinary actions and procedures against Smith and confirmed he ignored the request for him to leave his seat. They also apologized to Rock. Two sources told the TMZ Rubin and Hudson were furious at Smith, and there was plenty of yelling and heated conversations backstage with Will Smith's reps after the incident. So people are wondering, well, how did you ask Will Smith to leave, right? You know, did you go to a seat? No, you didn't. But they apparently went to his representatives backstage and told his representatives that he had to leave, but he didn't. The statement said, quote, "The board of directors today infiltrated disciplinary proceedings against Mr. Smith for violations of the Academy's standards of conduct, including inappropriate physical contact, abusive or threatening behavior, and compromising the integrity of the Academy. Mr. Smith was asked to leave the ceremony and refused, but we also recognize we could have handled the situation differently," end quote. Smith will receive 15 days notice of a vote as well as an opportunity to be heard by written response at the next board meeting scheduled for April 18th. So please make sure you subscribe because I will be covering that board meeting. The Academy may take action that could include suspension, expulsion, or other sanctions permitted by the bylaws and standards of conduct. So in his acceptance speech, Smith apologized to the Academy of Motion Pictures and Sciences, whose members vote for the awards and who stages the ceremony, but stopped short of apologizing to Rock. Smith initially laughed off the attack, writing on Instagram on Sunday evening, quote, "You can't invite people from Philly or Baltimore nowhere," end quote. Which is why I thought it was fake because, you know, as you can see from this footage that everybody's laughing, including himself. So I thought maybe this was all just a joke. Yet as the gravity of the situation became clear, Smith posted a public apology to Instagram 24 hours later after the ceremony, saying he wanted to say sorry formally to Rock. He said his behavior was unacceptable and inexcusable and left him embarrassed. So Daniel Radcliffe had a lot to say about this. So let's watch what Daniel Radcliffe had to say. And I'm going to be reading your chats. Yeah, so he's just tired of hearing everybody's opinions. And I just want to say hello to V. George for being an awesome mod, Jeannie M. as well. I also have Mystified here. Thank you so much for joining me. So let me just read your chats. B. Collins. But if you watch closely, Jada had the nerve to sit there and laugh. I hope Hollywood dropped the whole family. And that's the thing, you know, we have that issue with Jada Pinkett Smith and Will Smith protesting the Oscars. Then they show up to the Oscars and they do this. You know, I think they should be removed from the Academy. I'm not sure if their awards will get removed because there's a ton of people who still have their awards and done heinous things, such as Roman Polanski. And so I just hope they're removed from the Academy. And I hope Chris Rock actually pursues them in a civil lawsuit as well. So that's what I hope for the situation. People believe that these stars are good. Brainwashing works, Peggy writes. You know, I've been brainwashed. I was actually a big Will Smith fan up until this point. And, you know, we talk a little bit about Zoe Kravitz. I was a huge fan of Zoe Kravitz, but then the moment she threw Will Smith under the bus on Instagram, her past came out too, where she was dating Jaden Smith, Will Smith's son, when she was 24 and he was 14. And she's also friends with a known predator, Alexander Wang. So, you know, none of these stars are perfect, but I think I definitely would draw the line at someone getting assaulted. So I'm not a big fan of Will Smith after this point, for sure. Chris Rock was unprofessional. This isn't the time or place for some jokes. Interesting. There's people that are really divisive about this. Look, Souls Under Siege writes, look how the slap dominated the news when shootings, carjackings by teens, free-for-all, shoplifting, assaults on innocents, and the ignoring of the demographic responsible are ignored. Interesting. And that's the thing. Maybe the government is just trying to gaslight the public and keep our attentions off certain things. So thank you for that chat. So, all right, guys, I got to be real. I try to keep my live streams really short. This one was supposed to only be 10 minutes. It turned into 45 minutes. So please make sure you subscribe, ring the bell so you never miss a live. And I'm going to give my doggy a treat. Here you go. Here you go. Please like my video and, you know, stay safe, make good decisions, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys.